Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Pradyun and I'm going to talk about how I ended up on this stage today. It's my personal story of how I learned things, how I explored software, and well, how I became part of a community. And hopefully we can get to a good answer to that question. This is my first time keynoting, so I am nervous. So here goes. I should introduce myself. I am a college student. I'm in my 4th year of Bachelor of Engineering. I'm a Python Packaging Authority member, which means I volunteer my time to maintain tools for distribution of software written in Python. Specifically, I work on PIP, virtualenv, and a few more. I also maintain a configuration language called TOML, which is used by a lot of software, from Minecraft servers all the way over to packaging tools for Go, Rust, and Python. And I recently became a PSF fellow, which is a big honor, actually. So as I said, I'm going to talk about my journey. Not everyone has the same journey, so some of the things I say do not apply to everybody, but they did to me. So with that out of the way, let's get started. 7 years ago, I was still a school student spending most of my day playing games indoors and outdoors, on a computer or on a field. And one fine day, my father gave me a book, Core Python Programming, Wesley J. Chun. He said, how about you make a game instead of playing them? That was a very compelling idea for the 8th grader that was me. But the book was big. It was 1,100 pages. That's a big book. So it stayed closed, next to the PC, but closed. Until I picked it up one day and read a few chapters, like a storybook, because I didn't know how else to read things. And it was interesting. So I went ahead and installed Python on the PC. And I tried the first thing that it said you can try, print hello world. And it didn't work. I got something in red, an error message. The book did not say this would happen. It did not match what I understood print meant from all my reading. I was confused. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Other things were working. I could add 2 numbers, and I would get 1 plus 1 equal to 2, but not print. And so I closed the book again. It sat next to the computer again, closed. But I hadn't given up on it. I kept trying to figure out what was wrong. Everything except print seemed to be working, right? And so I did what everybody does. I Googled around. And that message, well, it didn't really tell me much. So I couldn't find what was wrong. So I decided to start over and check everything I was doing. And after trying a few times, I realized, hey, there are 2 groups of quick links on the website. I had downloaded 3, thinking it's better than 2. It is. But the book was using 2. So I was like, let's try 2. And it worked. And I was really, really happy that it worked. It's print hello world. It's the simplest program you can write. And in trying to write that program and make it work, it took me multiple days. And I had to understand what was wrong. When I started, I didn't know what print was. I didn't know how it worked. But I knew it should. So now I knew something changed about print between 2 and 3. So I Googled print Python 3. And there was a link to the documentation saying, well, print function, the print statement has been replaced with a print function in Python 3.0. What does a function mean? I am still starting to learn. and I don't know what most of those words mean. So I moved on. I looked at the book, and I flipped through its index, and I saw something called a range function. So, well, I started going through the book again, this time with a computer at hand, and starting the exercises and so on. I kept going till I reached the end of the book. 3 months later, I had realized what was wrong that day. It was that Python 2 and Python 3 were different. But when I had started, I only knew that print is not working. I didn't know what caused it. I didn't know why it was not working. But the way I realized why it was not working was to go through it again, step by step, trying to isolate what the problem was, check the assumptions that I made, and explore the other options I have. That's something I still go back to. My print hello world, getting print hello world working, was something that taught me how to debug issues in software. And that, to me, is a very interesting hello world program. That honestly taught me a lot more than the book did in the first few weeks. And in case you're wondering, that message is a lot better now. In Python 3.4.2, Nick Coughlin improved that, and then it was improved further in 3.7 by Sayam Khurana, which means now you get a hint telling you, hey, try this instead. It's much friendlier, and the value it adds to someone who's just starting is a lot. So I finished a book about Python, but I started learning Python for one thing, game. I wanted to make a good game. So I got about to doing that. And the book didn't talk about games. It talked about some graphical user interface, but not a game. So I had to figure out myself what I could do with it. By now, I had some idea about, you can pip install things and stuff. So I looked around. I used Google, Python gaming, and random searches, and I realized Pygame is an option. And so I started fiddling around with it. I started playing with Pygame. I made basic things like making a ball move, making a circle, then making that circle move. And over time, in a few weeks, I had a game. This was a game that I wrote from scratch using Pygame. In a few weeks, complete with a physics engine, 2 tanks that could move and shoot, with bullets that would vanish if they hit the wall. It wasn't very much, but it was fun. And building it was fun. Playing it with my friends was fun. And bouncing ideas off of my friends to make changes to the game and to make things more challenging, like changing the height of the wall every few seconds. Things like that were fun. And I enjoyed it a lot. And being able to see changes that you make visually and then fiddle around with them was a lot of fun. Something that excites me about newer projects that are geared towards students, like PPB, which is like a game engine for education with a focus on learning and fun. Something that I really valued starting. So I had a game. It worked OK. Then I discovered PyMonk. It's an excellent project by someone called Wiblo on GitHub. And they almost single-handedly wrote all of it. It's a wrap around a 2D physics library, Chipmunk, that's written in C. Anyway, I stumbled upon this while Googling for ideas for my game. And, well, PyMonk is a physics engine. I figured it's a lot better than mine. And, well, I can make bullets bounce around. So I decided to start using it. It was different. It was new. There was no book I could go back to read this. There was not too much documentation on how to use it. Because this was something one person wrote on their free time, but they had written something very useful. So I started trying to use it, and immediately I had questions. Initially, I didn't ask anybody. I just sat there confused, trying random things that I had no clue about. But then I realized I should ask someone, and I discovered Stack Overflow. So I decided, let's ask questions on Stack Overflow. How bad could it be? And to my surprise, Wiblo, the author of PyMonk, themselves answered a few of them. And they also took the time to explain to me how things worked. That changed a lot of things. That meant I could suddenly understand how PyMonk worked. And now that I was understanding something that I didn't understand earlier in a manner that wasn't exactly bookish, changed a lot of things for me. Well, so did the game. The game became faster. I tried to make the bullets bounce around, but it wasn't fun anymore, so I removed that. So the game hadn't really changed as such, but I had, because I realized that asking questions is a good idea. If you have a question, asking that to someone who already knows is a good idea because it helps them convey to you what they know, and it helps you understand things that you didn't have before. And also, since PyMonk was open source, I could read the source code of it. A lot of times, I actually did that, and starting to learn to read other people's code was one of the most important skills I picked up early on. Yes? OK. OK. Then I got an Android phone and a tablet, because my parents had one at home. And I got interested in Python on Android. There were a few apps on the App Store, QPython and Kiwi something, but none of them felt fun. They were all clunky, and because I had started reading source code for things, and I couldn't find their source code, they were not interesting to me anymore. Essentially, I just sat there confused why this is not working and not having any way to ask questions. Well, no one was answering them on Stack Overflow for me. So I started looking around for other options, and in the process, something interesting happened. I attended a talk called Python for Science, very broad as a topic, back in 2013. That was when I was learning things. I was interested in Python. I was interested in the science they were teaching at school. So I figured, hey, this talk could be interesting. Maybe I can make like a project out of it. And it was fun. I managed to ask a lot of questions and, in fact, answer some of the other people's questions. That was awesome. After the talk, I managed to get a chance to talk to the speaker, Eric Jones. He is the CEO of Anthought. And after our conversation, he offered me an internship at Anthought in the New Mumbai office. I agreed. Of course I agreed, because I am a 9th grader. I have not heard of internships for 9th grader. I'm like, yes, I am coming. So I did. I agreed, and that summer, I interned at Anthought. It was just a little under a month, so nothing substantial. But I did learn a lot of things. The project I had was essentially writing a plugin to get data from websites so that you can analyze that data in their Anthought Canopy program. I had no clue how to do it when I started. I needed to learn JavaScript. I needed to learn Python, pandas, NumPy, things I had not heard of before, and learn about HTML and things like that. So I did try something. It didn't work. But I learned a lot of new things. I learned why tests matter. I learned why software testing is something that you need to care about. Because if you don't know whether your software works when you make a change, well, how can you trust your change? So CI was all continuous integration. CI was also another thing I learned about during this time. And the fact that I was now working with multiple language got me interested in language translation. It's still an interest I have. And one of the things I learned immediately after my internship was things like compiler design and language design and what type systems actually are and what their differences are and stuff like that. Then I decided this was a good idea, and it was not. It's actually a really complicated problem, but I was an optimistic ninth grader. So yeah, that didn't work out, as the cross suggests. Somehow, though, I managed to get another internship at Anthot the next summer. Seems like they liked me doing nothing. So I decided that, hey, I want to do something nicer. And I went and asked the people in charge to give me something more interesting. And after a bit of deliberation of trying to figure out my project, we did. It was to port Anthot's open source tooling, these tools, to Python 3. And adding CI integration for them if they didn't have it already. That was very different from everything I had done before. I had never actually worked on code written by other people until that point. That summer, I learned a lot of things about communicating with people. Because luckily, I had someone I could poke every few minutes. And realizing that poking them every few minutes is not a good idea was important. At the same time, knowing to ask the right questions at the right time, to make sure that things that I'm not sure about and are problematic for me get resolved as quickly as possible was very, very useful. So here I was, porting their code base for Python 3 compatibility in 2014. And, well, as you can probably tell, some of them were actually useful. And they did merge eventually and get released. Although my internship was 2014. They actually had someone else do more work after I left. So it took them 2 more years because those tools were non-trivial. Nonetheless, for the first time, I was contributing. And now I was working on moderately complex code bases, talking to other people, and, well, working on software in a way I had not before. And this was all fun. I was learning the entire time. So I figured, let's see where else I can contribute. And I started exploring. GitHub, I had realized GitHub is a thing, thanks to Anthot. And now I started looking around. And one of the first tools I had used was pip. So I gravitated towards that because I knew that existed. And it was written in Python. And there was no other language like C, unlike Pygame. And I decided, hey, let's try reading. And I did read the code a lot. And then I realized the issue tracker has a long-standing issue. Number 59, add and upgrade all command. Pip doesn't have these yet, but we'll get into those in a bit. And I started reading that issue. It was long. It had more than 100 comments, some of them really long. But there was something interesting about it. People were talking about complicated things in a manner that others could understand. At least I could. And I didn't know much back then. So I understood what the problem was. But I didn't know that I could contribute to it. So I left a comment. Hey, is anyone doing this? Any updates? And I didn't get a response for a while. But this problem fit a lot of criteria that clicked for me. It was long, which I had successfully, well, consumed. And it was complicated. That complexity interested me. I was, of course, intimidated, but I also had a lot of time. I'm still in school. So I decided I'll pick this up and try to understand what the situation actually is. Well, that way, even if I couldn't solve it, I could write something that someone else could read to solve it. So I did. I went through the entire issue, the entire discussion, and I tried solving the problems that were listed there. Everything from how, well, the words people were using, because people were using different words to mean the same thing, to what they actually meant and what the various options we had were. This was something I had learned in my internships prior, that making sure you know what options you have at hand helps you choose between them. So I wrote everything down, and, well, then I posted that on the issue. A little after that, someone said, hey, good job writing that. And the discussion started again. And there was a lot of discussion. Lots of things were brought up. There were lots of new questions coming up. And this was a very technical problem. And it has many options. But what was interesting to me was, because I had written that document, I was suddenly able to keep up with all of these conversations because I understood the context. And that made me understand that, well, these weren't people trying to fight. They were just people coming from different perspectives. They all wanted to solve the problem. It's just they approached the problem in a different manner. And that meant, well, this just needed talking out. So Paul Moore said, hey, are you interested in taking this forward? I said yes. That was in June 2016. I did say we had a lot of discussion because in September 2016, all 3 months later, of more than 500 comments, multiple GitHub issues, multiple approaches explored, we ended up with something that everybody was happy with. And we merged the code. And I was like, oh, OK, that's interesting. That's something that's never happened before. I saw my own code get merged. And on top of that, I had actually understood things that people were saying that I was not understanding 3 months ago. In fact, I was actually suggesting additional ideas. And when this code got merged, I spent some time reflecting at what all had happened. I spent some time stalking people who had been part of the conversations. And I was overwhelmed. Donald Stuff, Ralph Gomers, Paul Moore, these were like people who had worked for a long time and had done very interesting things. And they just merged code from a 10th grader, 11th grader. What? But something else that happened was I realized how consensus is built, how you get people to discuss and come to a conclusion together, or at least agree to not come to a conclusion. And that was a very important learning. That's something I still go back to because, well, we're humans and that happens all the time. So now we had an upgrade strategy option in pip, so we didn't need an upgrade command. Upgrade all is still something we need, but that's blocked on something else. I got into college. 2 years passed, nothing much, but I got into college. I still had a lot of time, so I was like, hey, what can I do with it? I started Googling around, college student internships and stuff like that, and there was this Google Summer of Code. Now, this was very interesting. It meant I could get guidance and money for working on something like pip or something like Pygame Like, that would be awesome. So I started searching for what I could work on. And, well, I chose another issue that looked a lot like number 59 that I had worked on before. Uh, I mean, it was an old issue. It had a lot of comments. A lot of them were long. So I figured, hey, how different could it be? Maybe it'll take 3 months as well. Uh, so I wrote a mail saying, hey, I want to tackle the pip dependency resolver issue. Ha, a lot changed then. Um, a lot of things happened, but most importantly, I got accepted as a Google Summer of Code 2017 student in my first year at college. And I had awesome mentors, Donald Stuft and Justin Kapos. Both really kind, helpful, and just nice people. And so I worked on pip for the next 3 months, in and out of college. I had a small overlap with college, but I did manage to get some stuff done. Most of my work ended up being refactoring code, and this was all related to the dependencies resolver issue. But a lot of the other things that I did, the unrelated feature developments and improvements to code, were not really directly related to my project, but they were things that made working on the project easier, that made it easier for other people to communicate what things were. And that tickled something in my head. So I kept doing that. So Google Summer of Code, actually, I should mention, it was incredible to get mentored by Donald Stuft and Justin Kapos, because they're nice people. And to think that someone would spend time that they could be spending doing anything else to make me understand and to answer my stupid questions was incredibly valuable. And I'm still grateful to them for having done that in, well, a very optimistic kid there. So yeah, thanks to them, my GSOC was an amazing experience. But we didn't solve the actual issue that I was working on. And as it turns out, we're still working on that. Turns out that was not 3 months long. And it was a lot more complicated than what I thought it was going to be. But it's still fun. I'm still learning, and I'm still understanding what other people are saying, which is a good feeling when you've just started. But then a lot of things kept happening. So right around between those two slides here, 988, me saying, yes, I'll do this, and me actually being able to edit the issue, I got the maintainer bit on pip. That meant I was in charge of making pip stay working and improve it in the future. I'm still in college. That is wrong. But I was super happy that I was able to do this. So I took it. And over the next few, years, I have been working on it, making improvements here and there. And recently, I became a Python Software Foundation Fellow, recognizing my efforts in doing so. And it feels very weird to get recognized for something you do for fun. Nonetheless, a lot has happened. And since then, I have been a part of a broader community, a bigger group of people than just me and my friends who were playing that game when I was starting. And, fast forward to this year, I attended PyConUS. This was my first international conference, and thanks to Bloomberg for making that happen as a part of my internship. And what was most interesting about PyConUS for me was all of a sudden, those names on the internet, those handles and profile pictures had faces. These were actual people that I could meet, talk to, shake hands with, hug, and see how tall they are and what they sound like. Brett Cannon is very tall. So it was incredible to actually meet these people who had worked with me and supported me and answered my stupid questions. And to actually thank them for it, to actually sit with them again and work in person on complicated discussions. Let's just put it that way. Over there, while I was at PyConUS, I met a few organizers from PyCon.KR, and somehow my name got suggested to be a keynote speaker at PyCon.KR. So the dots connected, and well, here I am. So that's how I got here on stage today. But there's a lot more to the story, because how I got here has been due to a lot of support I've been getting. Starting with my family, because, well, I wouldn't have started if my father hadn't given me that book, and if my parents hadn't actually been supportive of me going in a direction that the regular education system does not permit. But beyond the immediate blood relations, there's been a very supportive group of people around me. I started with Python because, well, it was the book I had in front of me. And it was fun. It was simple. But most of my learning after finishing that book hasn't come from other books. It's come from doing things. It's come from experimenting. It's come from solving problems and annoyances that I had. And it's come from asking questions. Understanding things that I don't understand. And all of these involved interacting with someone else. And I was fortunate enough to have people around me that would guide me, that would explain things to me, and that would let me make mistakes or overpromise and not deliver. And at times, just let me be me. And that was super valuable. And I recognize now that I am in a position where I can talk to other people that not everyone has that. I was fortunate enough, I was privileged enough to have those. And which is why having a supportive and positive group of people around you in a community is very important. And luckily for me, Python has a great community. And, well, I did get into programming because it didn't know how to say print hello world. So there's that. Thank you.